Mainstream media gives you the impression that there is nothing good about America. In direct contrast to that, my podcasts will prove by examples that America has always been and still is the land of opportunity for everyone.
Welcome to another episode in the series Life Lessons with Dr. Bob. In this series, I interview people who became successful, even though most of them came from very modest means, sometimes even from poverty. Through our conversations, I try to draw out the key attributes of their personalities that they relied on to overcome the many obstacles on their way to success. Was it because they were smart, or because they had tremendous energy or drive, or because they had perseverance that they simply would not give up until the goal was reached? My guest today is Eddie Gallagher, who is most famous, some people would say infamous, for his 20-plus year career in the U.S. military, culminating as a chief petty officer in the Navy SEALs. Those who would use the term famous would point to his 8 overseas combat deployments, including service in both the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan, and that he was decorated for valor several times, including 2 Bronze Stars, and that he was named the #1 Navy SEAL chief following his return from Iraq, where he led a platoon that successfully defeated ISIS. His supporters would also mention that he retired from the Navy with full honors, pension, and medical benefits. On the other hand, his detractors would use the term infamous for him. They would refer to what happened during the Battle of Mosul in his final deployment in Iraq. 6 months after returning from that deployment, Eddie was accused of multiple offenses, the most serious of which was that he murdered a prisoner of war, a 17-year-old member of ISIS. Those charges kicked off an intensive 10-month investigation into his alleged crimes that led to his arrest in 2018 and incarceration at Camp Pendleton prior to a court-martial. Eddie was charged with premeditated murder, attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and several lesser offenses, and he was jailed awaiting his court-martial. The jury in that trial acquitted him on 6 of those 7 original charges, but found him guilty of the 7th charge of wrongfully posing for an unofficial picture with a human casualty. Now, that's a rather minor offense, which carried a maximum prison sentence of 4 months, but since Eddie had already served more time than that during his pretrial confinement, he was immediately released. The jury also recommended that he be demoted 1 grade from chief petty officer to petty officer first class. But the Navy brass didn't follow that recommendation. Instead, they demoted Eddie to the lowest rank in the Navy, seaman recruit. Although he was no longer in jail, Eddie's challenges were not over. The demotion to seaman recruit would seriously affect his pension and benefits. His wife, Andrea, and his brother, Sean, accelerated their efforts to get justice for Eddie. Their cause was picked up by various congressmen, and that led the Navy to reduce his punishment from a full demotion to a 1-rank demotion, as the jury had recommended. A few months later, President Trump, who called Eddie the ultimate fighter, pressured the Navy to return his rank to chief petty officer, which enabled him to retire in November of 2019 with full honors, pension, and medical benefits. There is a huge amount of information about Eddie Gallagher in this case on the internet for you to probe. Famous or infamous, you'll have to decide. But now he's here, and we'll hear it from Eddie. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here.
First, let's talk about your military career. Starting in 1999, when you enlisted in the Navy after finishing high school, as I recall, your father was in the Army, So why did you choose the Navy?
So yeah, I grew up a military brat. My dad was in the Army for I think 24 years. So I grew up a lot, bouncing around every 2 years, a lot in Asia, most of my childhood, and then we ended up in Indiana for high school. And I really had no direction at that point. I was just one of those kids that didn't care about school. Was just more going out, hanging out with my buddies. But I did know, I think because of my military upbringing that I needed to do something worthwhile. I saw a lot of my friends going down a certain road, and I was like, that's not the path that I should be on. So I decided to enlist in the Navy. And the reason I chose the Navy, I come from a big military family. All my uncles are all Navy. Both my grandpas were in the Navy, and then both my grandmas worked in the Navy as nurses. So we come from a Navy family. My dad is sort of
He's the outsider.
outlier.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to be a SEAL. I knew if I joined the military, I wanted to be a commando of some sort. And I grew up watching Charlie Sheen and Navy SEALs, and that was had a huge impact on me. And then because most of my uncles were naval aviators, I grew up watching Top Gun nonstop, so the Navy was a pretty easy choice, but I did want to be a SEAL.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah.
You were in the Navy, but you also attended the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, and you became the first non-Marine to graduate from that program. I didn't realize that you could shift into different corps.
Yep. So the way it works. When I joined the Navy, you had to pick a job. Mm-hmm. I told them that I wanted to be a SEAL. They were like, okay, that's great, but you have to pick a rate, which is a job in the Navy. I picked corpsman, which was a medic, and so I didn't really look too much into it when I did it. I was like, hey, I'm just going to go do this school and then go right to being a SEAL. But as I was going through Corps school, I learned that the Marines do not have their own medics. The Navy supplies them, and they're called corpsmen. So
I didn't know that.
When I found out that I wasn't going to get a SEAL contract because, surprise, surprise, my recruiter didn't tell me the whole truth. But I chose the next path, which is I wanted to go be with the Marines. I knew, that they were warriors, that they had commandos in their ranks. So I was like, you know what, that's what I'll go do. So I chose to get assigned to them. So I got assigned to a grunt platoon, which is like pretty much a line unit. And I was the medic. And from there, I continued to aspire to go to BUDS. So I picked any type of school that would help me get there. I went to Marine Combat Instructor of Water Survival School, which is a very tough school. There, I volunteered for that. I volunteered for anything that would better me to prepare me for BUDS. And then
and BUDS, for our viewers, stands for Basic Underwater Demolition.
School. Yep.
SEALs,
and that is the test gate to become a SEAL.
And that's right here in San Diego.
Yep.
The training
in Coronado, California. Yeah. I volunteered for school after school, and I was told that state platoon or sniper platoon was one of the best, which it was. And so I volunteered to go take the screening for that. That was about a 2-month screening. I got selected, let into the platoon, and luckily I was a high performer. The guys liked me, so they let me have a slot in sniper school.
Even though you were still a Navy Corpsman.
Yes.
Right.
So the agreement was that I was be allowed to go through sniper school. I just would not get a official certificate, and I was fine with that. I was like, you know what?
Sure. Who needs this certificate?
Yeah, I don't need a certificate. I want the training. I was privileged enough to go through there before I went to BUDS.
And did you deploy with the Marines?
I did twice, 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So twice pre 9/11, once post.
And then how did you finally get into BUDS?
That was a long journey as well. I kept taking the screener, which is you have to screen to even get looked at to go to BUDS. So it's a physical screener you take, and they judge you off your test scores. And so I probably took that 10, 15 times. between then, did really well on each of them. But the problem is when you're assigned to a unit in the military, they have to sign off on letting you go.
And if you're good in that unit, of course, they want to keep you.
Yeah, and I had a pretty good reputation, and obviously 9/11 had just kicked off, so they were like, we need the numbers, we need people here. But I kept fighting, and eventually there was a chief that checked in, and he had seen that I had screened 15 times, and he's like, why are we not letting this guy go? And he literally marched me down to the administration office and got me orders right there. I don't think if it wasn't for that guy, I might have not ever went.
Strange. Here is an individual who's highly trained, highly motivated, and you had a fight to join.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Yeah.
it shouldn't be that way. In business, I've run businesses, and it isn't that way. If somebody's really trained and really motivated, you say, come on in.
It's not that way anymore. Now, the kids that want to be a SEAL, they're allowed to join with a contract, and they go right from boot camp. They go to preparatory school, I think, for a month. I'm not sure on the time, but then they go right to BUD/S.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a
Much easier.
Yeah.
Much easier time. Now, the Navy SEALs are the most well-known of the Special Forces, probably because they've been featured in so many movies. But there are other Special Forces in the other branches of the military, the Army Green Beret, the Rangers, Night Stalkers, and Delta. What are the differences between the Navy SEALs and these other Special Force groups?
I think the thing that sets Navy SEALs apart from the other branches is our amphibious element. Our main task is waterborne, really. But I do think, and that's sort of like a old school way of thinking, and that's when I joined, that's what sort of set the SEALs apart. But because of the past 20 years of combat, we've sort of morphed. I think each special operations unit seems to have morphed into the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We've all sort of done each other's job. But I think, the thing that sets us apart from the Green Berets, Rangers, is obviously our selection process is a lot more rigorous, a lot more time consuming. But just that we're sort of outside the box thinkers, and not that they aren't, but I think because we're in the Navy, we're sort of set aside and we're allowed to sort of operate in a certain way. Whereas like the Green Berets or MARSOC, they still belong to the Marines or they still belong to the Army, so they have to follow under big Army or big the Marine rules. But I'll say this: over the years, the SEAL teams have sort of gone to that now, towards big Navy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you were trained and qualified as a medic, a sniper, and an explosive expert. Is that right? Three areas that that you consider yourself to be very, very qualified for.
Yeah, those are 3 schools that I was able to go to while I was in. 3 qualifications that I achieved.
That's fantastic. That's
fantastic. Among others, but yeah, those are the 3 main ones.
And did you get to perform in each of those roles, or is it all mixed together and you just go to the field? Or are you assigned to be a medic on this team and a sniper on that team and an explosive expert on another team?
So because I had the prior Marine experience before I went to BUD/S and became a SEAL, I was already a prior medic. So I was sort of voluntold I had to go to Special Operations Medical School, which I'm glad I did. It was a very difficult school, about 8 months, and I came out of that, so I was a Special Operations medic when I checked in. But not only that, because I had been to sniper school already before I became a SEAL, I was already a sniper as well, which is kind of unheard of for a new guy checking in at a team. So I had those 2 qualifications already, and then when I did my first combat deployment with the SEAL teams, we did a lot of direct action missions, hitting houses, and some of the older guys I noticed were breachers, and they were the first ones to the door, the first ones to make
entry. And that's
entry.
another specialty. Breaching is another.
Yeah, it's explosives.
I see.
You're tasked with opening doors that are locked or barricaded, or just are getting around walls, getting through walls that you need to. So you have to be very good with explosives. So I saw a lot of the older guys who were breachers were making entry first. They were always in the front, so I was like, I want to be in the front. So I went to breacher school when I came back from that deployment. And so yeah, I got to implement, use that my next deployment, which was awesome.
Which of those were hardest to learn?
I mean, for me, I think the sniper school, Marine sniper school, was definitely a big challenge. I never grew up shooting guns. The first time I shot a gun was in the Marine Corps when I was with them. But I had very good instructors, very good teammates in my platoon who taught me well, so I had a pretty good knack for it. But at Marine Corps Sniper School, because I was in the Navy, I got special treatment. Some instructors didn't appreciate the fact, which I understand. It's a very the Marine Corps Sniper School is a very prestigious school, and it demands a lot of respect. So I do understand their thought process of, why are we letting this? And at the time, I was like 20 years old, so like, why are we letting this kid through here? But I'll tell you, when I did graduate, they all came up and shook my hand, and they were, I got their respect. But yeah, I paid for it along the way. Yeah.
So the standard fee was even higher than it would be for a Marine.
Yeah, I got a little bit of extra attention. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I've always been curious, what's the difference between a sniper and a sharpshooter?
Well, a sniper is trained in fieldcraft and marksmanship, and they are tasked with delivering long-range precision shots from concealed positions.
And long range means what? 1,000 yards?
1,000 to 2,000. Wow. I forget. The Canadians, I do believe, have the longest sniper shot. But you are the eyes and ears of the unit that you're working with, especially in the Marines. You're assigned to companies, and when you go out ahead of everybody else, and you're passing back all the intel, all the information that you're seeing, and then you are also required to take shots when needed.
Requires amazing patience, right? From what I understand.
I'd say that's about 90% of it is
waiting.
I think a lot of the movies out there portray it as like, a lot of action. No, it's a lot of sitting around waiting, staying focused, trying to stay focused for hours on end.
Without revealing any confidential information, of course, can you tell me about some missions where you use those talents?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, my second deployment to Afghanistan, I operated in all three capacities, breacher, sniper, and medic. But for Afghanistan, sniping was definitely the deal, because the Taliban knew to keep their distance, because if they came in, they were going to get worked over. So they would keep their distance. So it was sort of like this is where my use, my tactics and everything I've learned comes to use. So, we did multiple operations at deployment, and what we would do is disruption operations. So we would fly in about 2 a.m.
Helicopters.
Yep. To an area where the Taliban was known to either meet, congregate, sell weapons, sell the drugs, a lot of opium, all that. So we would come in there and sort of search through, find all the drugs, weapons they were hiding there, burn them around 5 a.m, and that would pretty much signal to them that, hey, the Americans are here, and then it would just be an all-out fight the rest of the day. They'd come in and there's just a lot of firefights with employing the sniper rifles.
Were you ever wounded in combat?
No, thank God.
Because I didn't see a Purple Heart, which is good.
No.
Which is good. I wouldn't brag about getting a Purple Heart, right?
That was all God. Yeah. I mean, I've had some close calls, but no, I was lucky enough never to be wounded.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Now, I'm sure that the Navy's case against you for murder or attempted murder and facing imprisonment was the greatest challenge in your life. But now tell us how your wife, Andrea, and your brother, Sean, were helpful in winning your case against the Navy.
Sure. So, for the listeners that don't have the whole backstory, obviously, my Last deployment was to Mosul, Iraq, where ISIS had the stronghold over, and we were tasked with clearing through Mosul and getting rid of ISIS. We were partnered up with the Iraqis. It's called the Emergency Response Division, and we were tasked with advising, assisting, and accompanying them as they pushed through. So we were supposed to stay behind them a little bit and sort of advise them as they went, and then also if we needed to step in, we would. So that was a very rigorous, chaotic deployment, but we managed to push ISIS out by the end of it. It was about a 7-month deployment. During that time, there was some individuals in my platoon, so I was the platoon chief, so I was overall in charge of the tactics.
How big is the platoon? 20 people?
About 22 guys.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that ebbs and flows, depending, but I will just say 22. There was about 3 guys that did not like me. They didn't like me since I had taken over. They didn't like the former leadership that I displayed. I guess I was too old school, too rough. And so during this deployment, they started banding together and trying to get everybody else not to like me. And it didn't really work to an extent. They got about one or two other guys. And so at the end of that deployment, we had come home. It was already known that there was, these guys didn't like me. I didn't like them. It was very petty. But these guys decided to escalate it when they got home, started talking trash about me around the SEAL teams, making up these rumors that I was a thief, that I was too aggressive, my tactics were bad.
How can somebody say somebody's too aggressive in the military? That's the job, isn't it? I would think that the more aggressive you are, the more successful you are.
There is that train of thought, and that's the train of thought that I was on,
right.
And that I had been raised in.
For example, this deployment that you're talking about, you were supposed to be in a support action, but from what I read, you said, well, fuck that. I'm going to go into the action because these people need my help.
Well, yeah, I got into the action when we needed to because the Iraqis would not move forward without us.
Right, I see.
Yeah, so it gave them, us getting in and engaging with ISIS would then give them the motivation to start pushing forward, which we quickly learned.
And that's what those few members of the team didn't like.
No, they did not like the fact that we were pushing up, that we were engaging. To sort of get some context here, these guys didn't agree with the war in the first place.
So what were they there? How can you possibly select and try hard to get into an elite team like the SEALs and not believe in the mission? I don't get it.
And that's
why would you do it?
That was the hard thing for me to comprehend as a leader.
Go to ballet school.
And
like you said, join the Coast Guard.
Yeah, but even then, the Coast Guard has to deal with dangerous situations. I'm like, I don't understand what you guys are doing here. It blew my mind that they would put themselves through that rigorous selection process and then get there and then complain about and this was a golden deployment. This was literally like, here you go, the gloves are off, take care of evil.
Right.
And that's how I looked at it. I was like, we get to get rid of all this evil out of here.
That's the goal.
But, and here's the thing, like, I think everybody has this train of thought where they think all SEALs are the same, we're all aggressive, we're all this. It's not the truth. There's division. And I've seen it, before this. There are certain people who join not to go to combat, but to pick up rank and to make a career. And then there are others who join, and they're true believers that are like, we are here to do the job, and we're here for our brothers and to protect ourselves.
Now, you couldn't fire them? You couldn't say, I don't want you on my team, couldn't you?
I did that near the end of deployment. I finally had it, and I was going to move a couple of them, or no, actually just one of them, to another platoon. And that's where everything sort of came to a head. And we had to sit down, we had to talk about it, and at the end of the day, I was like, I let this guy stay in the platoon, but I gave him about, I think it was like 2 weeks worth of punishment of like doing certain odds and ends, around the camp because I had come across some text messages that he was sending that they were pretty much conspiring against me. And as a leader, I'm not going to jump to conclusions. I sat him down. I was like, why are you writing this? What is your thought process in this? And he finally came forward and was like, we're tired, this and this. And, it was understandable. But I was like, do you understand that, right? You guys are in your own head that I'm making you do all this. This is the job. And he understood.
No, you didn't write the job description.
No,
it was written.
And I did make it very blatant. I was like, we're not going to change anything we're doing. We're going to keep pushing forward. I was like, so you can either leave or you can stay. Yep. I was like, but if you do stay, you will do these little punishment jobs for the next 2 weeks because you tried, you did this behind my back. And that's where it sort of ended. I had a meeting with the rest of his friends that were involved, and everyone agreed to kumbaya, cool, everyone's good, but they didn't stop. No. So when we got back from that deployment, they continued to spread rumors about me. And guys, I had a very good reputation at the time, so a lot of guys were coming up to me telling me what they were saying. So I held one last meeting when we got back, when we were back in the States at the team. And I told them to air their grievances, that we needed to just get this out in the open and that we're professionals and we needed to move on with our career. And even that, they wouldn't say anything to my face.
It's strange. I would have thought that in the military you could just fire them, right?
No.
In business,
no.
I can tell you, in business, I wouldn't have put up with that for a minute.
The problem...
Right?
The problem, not in the mill, but in the SEAL teams, is when someone is not up to task or not up to par, they won't fire that individual because their excuse is, well, we've dumped all this money into this individual up to this point.
I see.
So
what
we
a
can't just
fucking
get rid of it.
that is.
It is.
You got to get rid of it. If you have a bad hand, you fold.
Yeah.
Okay? You get rid of that hand. You can't fix it. No.
Yeah.
It's an attitude problem. You can't fix attitude. Now, I can understand if they're not performing well as in one particular function, if they're not, shooting on target, but their attitude is right, but their performance is lacking, okay, then you work with them, try to increase the performance. But you can't fix attitude.
No.
Right? And I've my whole life in business, we screen very carefully for attitude. That was the most important thing. Ability you can supplement, you can help with ability, but you can't fix attitude.
No.
What a shame.
Everybody should be on board with the mission.
Right.
And what we're doing.
Right. If you're not on board with the mission, you don't belong in that job.
And even if you don't even have to agree with the mission completely, but you should be on board with, you're here with your brothers and
I'm doing the best I can.
We're going together, and if your job is to bring your brother home, that's it, and his job is to bring you home.
That's it.
And that's all that matters.
Wow.
But that's the thing, like these, and I'll call them kids because that's what they acted like. They just didn't have that attitude. It was very like, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? There was a lot of that kind of attitude and insinuation on their actions. So as a chief, it was hard for me to deal with it. I came from a very old school way of doing things, and I just, I thought I handled the best way I could. But these guys, they kept pushing forward. So they went to the command when I got, we got back after this meeting I had back in the States. Mm-hmm. They went to the command with these accusations, and they said, well, he was stealing. And the command's like, well, what did he steal? And they had nothing. They're like, well, we think it was like a Red Bull or whatever 6 months ago. Out of the fridge. Yeah. So the command was like, listen, it sounds like you guys had a pretty busy deployment. Take some time and decompress, because these accusations are ridiculous. And
I'm going to say you're in the field. What are you going to steal? And even if you stole something, what are you going to do with it?
Well, that's the funny part.
You're not going to sell it on eBay.
Even these petty accusations they had against me came out in my trial that none of them were true.
Right.
And that these guys were, I mean, even the smallest one. But the command was like, hey, we don't see anything here. I got number one chief out of that deployment.
Yeah, right.
I was moving upward, and they were like, this guy is a top performer. This is, a surprise to us that you guys are coming to us with this, but there's no proof. So they told the guys to go decompress. Well, these guys come back about 3 months later and say that, oh, well, we have something on him now. And they're, the command was like, well, okay. And they're like, he killed a ISIS prisoner illegally, and he stabbed him to death. So the command looked at them and was like, are you sure? And they were like, yes. And they're like, and their command warned them, like, do you know the frag radius, which is the blast radius of this? If this story gets out, it's going to be huge. And they were like, we don't care. So like, all right. So the command ran it up the chain. At the time, I was an instructor at the training detachment, and I got pulled out, and they told me that I could no longer be an instructor, that I was, they didn't even tell me I was under investigation. They just said, you just can't instruct right now. We need to figure out what's going on. So I sat in an office for about a month and a half, and the command, slowly, all the leadership started shunning me. Nobody would talk to me. I couldn't even ask a simple question. And so it was a very odd time, but here's the thing. Because I was a true believer, I literally believed that my command would have my back, that I did nothing wrong. I was like, they will see through this. And it wasn't until about 4 months in, after I was pulled from being an instructor, I got called into work one day at 6 a.m. to go meet the executive officer. I was told he wanted to have a word with me. I show up, and there was about 5 NCIS agents in his office.
What does NCIS stand for?
Naval Criminal Investigation Service. They're like rent-a-cops, but they work for the government, and they pretty much handle all the crimes inside the Navy and Marines. They're the investigative body. Mm-hmm. So I was told that, so I was called into the XO's office. NCIS took me. They handcuffed me right at work, paraded me through in front of everybody, and then took me into an interrogation room. And at the time, I told them, I was like, hey, I wasn't being a dick to them, or I was being polite. I was like, I'm not going to talk to you without my lawyer.
Absolutely right.
And so they were like, okay. And they shut the door and locked it and left me in there for about 7 hours. During that time, they had a whole SWAT, well, not to say SWAT, but a raid team set up at my house. They raided my house, pulled my two boys out in gunpoint in their underwear. My wife was not home at the time, and they laid siege to my house. And they had my whole neighborhood. I lived in military housing. They had it all blockaded off. You would have thought I was like a cartel member. And just to give some perspective, they have nothing at this point. This is just on a whim.
Did they tell you what this is all about? By that time,
no, they didn't even tell me they raided my house. So I left the interrogation room, and I was like, "Hey, can I get my phone?" They're like, "No, we're keeping your phone, and you don't get anything." And oh, by the way, and there was a very tiny little NCIS agent there. He was like, "Oh, I saw your wife today," and I was like, "What?" And I have no clue. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, I saw her," and he kept saying that, and I was like,
"What does that mean?"
All right. So obviously, I drove home, not knowing what he was talking about until I got home, and my wife's like, "No, they were in here and they took everything, and they, pretty much trashed our house." So at that point, I was furious. Then I knew, I was like, okay, this just got real. This is ridiculous. I went to my command the next day, talked to the Group 1 Master Chief, who's in charge of the West Coast SEAL teams. And I was like, hey, what do I do? Like, I don't understand what's going on. And he was like, I can't talk to you, but you can go talk to a chaplain. That was his
Talk to a chaplain?
Yeah.
How about talking to a lawyer?
Exactly. Nobody would talk to me. So I was completely shunned.
And even the lawyer, he works for the Navy.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So,
and that gets into a whole other element.
Right.
So at that point, I decided to retire. I was like, I'm done. I'm not staying in this community. This is ridiculous. So my wife and I bought a house in Florida online. I moved them out there. And then the plan was I was going to geo-batch, go back to San Diego, spend my last year in San Diego until I retired, and move to Florida. Mm-hmm. Little did I know that NCIS was staking me out the whole time. I moved my family down. When I came back, I got to go to a TBI clinic, which it's called NICO. And it's a regular procedure guys go to before they get out, is to get checked up head to toe, because we've all taken damage over the years and have never reported it. So it was more like, okay, I want to know what's wrong with me.
Even though you had no symptoms that you knew of.
Okay. I mean, I didn't. And I was like, but I wanted to.
Yeah, might as well take advantage
exactly.
of this, and I want to be checked out.
Especially when they weren't letting me work. I'm like, well, then I might as well better myself.
Yeah.
If you're not going to let me work.
They didn't give you any assignment. You were just sitting at a desk.
I had nothing. No job. So I went there, and I was there for about a week. And then on September 11th, 2007 or 18, they came in and arrested me out of that clinic. They came and were like, it was very sort of anticlimactic. They were like, hey, they're like, we need to handcuff you and take you to military prison. I asked, I was like, why? What am I doing wrong? And they're like, we don't know. We were just ordered to take you by the admiral. And so I didn't ask, I was like, okay. I didn't want to cause a stir, but I definitely was nervous. So I ended up going to the brig, which is military prison on Miramar. It's a Marine Air Base here in San Diego. And they checked me in there, and that's when I knew. I was like, something's up, because everybody in there was waiting for me. They treated me like I was Jason Bourne, like I was gonna escape. They chained me, my ankles to my wrists, and then threw me in solitary for the first 3 days. And soon I was let out of that, and from there I was there for 9 months. That's where the fight started. I had my lawyer call my wife and tell her that I was in prison, and
Is this a Navy lawyer?
No, this was a lawyer that I had set aside, because while this was going on, I was like, okay, I've never been in a situation like this. I had talked to some buddies. They're like, listen, you need to lawyer up just in case something happens. So it was this nonprofit called United American Patriots. I contacted them because a buddy recommended them, and they looked at my case, or not my case at the time, but they just heard me out, and they were like, okay, we will be here for you if something does happen. So I called them. They ended up, calling my wife, but what they told me was, listen, now that you're in there, you're not getting out. And there's no bail system in the military. There's nothing. You're going to be in there until your trial.
But I don't understand. Jail in civilian life is you keep people there because they're a danger to society. You weren't a danger to society. There was nothing.
No.
Right?
So, and here's the kicker. About 4 days in, you are allowed to go to I'll call it a kangaroo court that the brig or the military prison puts on. They go get an officer that's out in that base, bring him in. They're like, you're the judge. You are going to deem whether this person should stay in prison or not. They brought me in for that. That's when I first met the prosecution that was coming after me, and they literally walked in with a stack of papers this high, and gave it to my lawyer, and like, oh, here's our evidence, which, it was like 2,000 pages. And they got up there and called me everything in the book, from being a fake Christian, a war criminal, that I beat my wife, that I'm a drug mule. I mean, they had these lists of accusations, which I was mind blown. Like, how were they saying these things? Like, how, like, I beat my wife, like I'm a fake Christian. But they were allowed to say them. And my lawyers had nothing. They were like, well, and I ended up firing these lawyers that I had. But they were like, oh, well, this is the way it is. They were so used to operating in that system. They're just like, yeah, sorry. And the judge obviously deemed
a danger.
Keep him in here.
Right.
And, you know, the big thing is they deemed me a danger because one of the guys in my platoon lived across the street from me. And he wrote a letter that day before. The day they arrested me, he wrote the letter and said that I was stalking him and that I would walk my 2 French bulldogs past his house on purpose to intimidate him, which I had no clue this guy was even involved at the time. But that was like the kind of stuff that they did. And so the judge was like, you're not getting out. So I got let back into solitary and then eventually put back into general population. And then I was in, pretty much from there, you are at the whims of the United States Code of Military Justice and what they want to do to you. And so at that point, and I know this was a long explanation, but to answer your point about what my wife and brother did, at that point, my wife was like, this is ridiculous. She wrote the command saying, why is this happening to my husband? And because nobody was even reaching out to my family to help at the time. And she's like, I don't understand what's going on. She got no reply. And so then she started her own organic social media campaign.
Fantastic.
And started getting the truth out about what was going on. Gained a massive following over the 9 months that I was in there. And really, her and my brother hit the ground running. You know, while my wife was doing the social media campaign, my brother, who lived in D.C., who had previously worked on Capitol Hill, was hitting Capitol Hill every day, talking to Congress, knocking down doors, like trying to get somebody to pay attention. And because of all that work that those two did, they got eventually invited onto Fox News, and they were told that at the time President Trump was a big Fox and Friends watcher, you know, in the morning. So when Andrea finally got invited onto Fox and Friends, she laid the message out pretty strong and pretty well, and it got the president's attention. And here's the complaints that she was given is, you know, I was locked up unjustly. They didn't charge me until I was in prison for about 2.5 months. They didn't even bring my charges to me.
No charges. You were in prison without being charged.
So they call it pretrial confinement. And here's the thing. You're a prisoner. There's no difference between you, who hasn't gone to trial yet, or the guy that's serving 25 years for rape.
Same prison.
You are treated the same. Almost you're treated worse. You're treated worse than the prisoners because you have no job. You have nothing to do all day. You sit in a chair and all they would play is CNN. You're not allowed.
That is torture.
Oh yeah, and
that's cruel and unusual punishment.
You can't make it up, and that's pretty much how it is there, you know. And then the guards were instructed to mess with me to make me snap. So I would get strip searched, my cell tossed, but I knew early on that it was a game. That one of the guards that was actually was supporting me, or was like, this is messed up that you're in here. He told me, he's like, they're coming in briefing us, telling us to make you snap. And so I knew every time they did it, I would just stare at them like, and you know, this
is our own government.
This is our own
military that you spent 20 years with.
Yeah.
Of your career, doing your job, doing it so admirably that you got all sorts of awards, and this is how they treat you?
Oh yeah.
Without being charged even.
Yeah. This is what was going on. And at the time I couldn't even like make sense of any of it. I was just trying to survive in there, and like, I don't understand what's going on. While my wife and brother were out there fighting tooth and nail to get the truth out, and which finally got the president's attention. and he put out a tweet saying, "Let him out of prison so he can properly defend himself." He wasn't saying I was guilty or not guilty.
No,
he was like, "Give this guy the rights he deserves." So when he put out that tweet, I was let out, but my command, who were avid Trump haters, with the Admiral Green and Rosenblum, they decided to take charge and lock me in a barracks room for another 2 months. And I had
out of jail, out of that jail, but
I
into
literally
another
walked
jail.
out of jail, into a
another
barracks
jail.
room, and got given a list of rules, which was like, you cannot leave, you cannot do anything, no food, no nothing. You have to be, do this. It was crazy. So that ended up happening. I was in Balboa, which is the naval hospital here, in a barracks room for I think it was almost 2 months. And then the prosecution got caught cheating. They sent out spyware to my defense, to a bunch of journalists who started writing favorable articles about me because they were actually doing some investigating and found out the truth. They sent out this beacon to everybody to get all of the information, what was going on, and it all got caught. So the judge, his remedy, instead of dropping the case and being like, "This is ridiculous," was like, "No, I'll just get another prosecutor in here and we'll let him out of confinement so he can be with his family." And at that point, I was about a little less than a month out from trial. I had a whole new set of lawyers. I had fired the first ones because that was a whole other adverse situation we were dealing with. This nonprofit that I had signed off with was pretty much extorting us. They weren't doing me any due diligence in court. They would not fight for me. They told me at one point that they wanted to push my trial out a year after I had already been in prison for about 7 months.
So you would stay in prison another year?
Yes.
Right.
And they would threaten me with, if you don't let us push this out a year, then you'll go. And I was facing life without parole. So they're like, then you're going to lose and you're going to go to prison for life. And I was adamant. I was like, no. I was like, I'm going to trial now. I'm innocent. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
What a frightening story.
And then it wasn't until we have them on voice recording too, that they called my wife and said, because there was another nonprofit funded by SEALs that was raising money for us, and it got to about $250,000, and they were like, "We want that money." And my wife's like, "No."
The first group of lawyers wanted that money,
Yes.
the $250,000, even though they didn't do anything for it.
No, and they were working for a nonprofit, and I had signed papers saying that I would never pay a dime.
Right.
They told my wife they wanted the money. My wife said, "We plan on giving you the money after the case, but this money is being set aside. If I go away for life, this will help take care of the family." On tape, we have them. If you don't give us that money, then we're going to leave him in there. So at that point, I ended up firing them. And that was about a month and a half out before my trial. And I hired a whole new legal team. Tim Parlatori, and then Mark Mukasey, who was one of Trump's lawyers, jumped on board.
Brilliant guy.
Oh,
yeah.
Just phenomenal. So we went into court after I was
So even though it's a military trial, you're able to hire non-military defense.
You are. And
Okay.
here's the issue, though, is nobody can afford to do that in the
Sure,
military.
that's right.
That's why here's the other issue, is the Navy will give you a lawyer. They're like, "Oh, here's your appointed lawyer.
Yeah.
Here's what they did for me." That lawyer didn't show up I was in the brig for about 2 months. He finally shows up. He's not even stationed anywhere near me. He's in Lemoore, which is 3.5 hours away. The first thing he says to me, he's like, "I don't know why they assigned me to you, but I'm not going to be able to come down here."
Of course not.
And this is what he says: "We should start talking about a plea deal."
Oh, sure.
And this is before I'm like, "Did you?"
In other
even
words,
look
you're
at the
guilty.
case?"
Let's plead down.
Yeah, let's get this done.
Wow.
And I was like, "You're out of your fucking mind.
Right.
I'm not doing this.
Right.
I'm innocent. I'm going to fight this tooth and nail." So I ended up hiring these other civilian attorneys, and we went to court, and The trial was, it couldn't have gone better. It went way better than any of us imagined. I mean, the prosecution completely shit the bed. All their witnesses got caught lying on stand. The jury saw right through it. And then even their main witness admitted
Recanted.
to killing the person.
Right.
Was like, no, I killed him. So
Perfect.
it was good.
Perfect. I mean, that was a miracle from heaven that he came out and said, I killed it. Eddie didn't kill him. I killed him.
Yeah.
You didn't expect that, right? Or
No, I expected, so I knew he was teetering, or not teetering, but he came to visit me. Actually, two of the guys came to visit me when I was in prison. And they were crying, one of them was crying, saying that this was all a lie and that it had gotten away from them and that this had gone too far. At that point, I just told him, I looked him in his face and I was like, I forgive you, but I don't understand where I'm facing life in prison. Where do we go from here? And he was like, I don't know. And then another guy came in, pretty much the same kind of interaction. But he was like, we were caught up in this, and they're telling them, NCIS is telling them if they change their tune, they're going to prison.
I see.
So I don't know what happened, but yeah, that guy came in and was like, I did it. I wasn't expecting that at all.
What a gift from heaven.
Oh, yeah. And, the prosecution was playing such dirty games. They gave all of their witnesses full immunity.
Total immunity.
But any of my witnesses were not allowed at all. So this guy, Corey Scott, used the full immunity against them. I was like, all right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. But then they tried to try him for perjury. A different story.
They attacked him, said he was lying. The amount of BS lies they make up in those situations.
What
right
is
away.
The objective?
So here's the objective.
Why does anybody care? Whether you stabbed a guy who was dying anyway or not, why would the military spend its time and money to prosecute?
There's a bunch of different elements on
why this happened.
Why this happened. Everyone had their reasons why they were acting in a certain way. Naval Special Warfare Command was doing this to me because over the past couple years they were getting a lot of scrutiny. The SEALs were in a lot of articles for drugs, for all stuff that didn't make the community look good. So when my accusation came across the desk of the admiral, he was like, he saw, and this is the crazy part, he saw that I had a good reputation, that I had all, accolades, and he was like, hang this guy out to dry to send a message. Because I was well-liked, and he was like, this is who we're going to hang out to dry. Without even looking into the story. And then then when you want to talk about the prosecutors or NCIS, all that is a mixture, a dangerous combination of incompetence and ambition. And that's all that is.
And they're told what to do,
and
they
all
don't
trying
care.
to make a career.
Right, I see.
Yeah. It was gross.
You are one strong guy to be able to withstand all that.
Well, the only way I could withstand it is God, and that's it. I think I grew closer to God in prison, and He's the only reason that I came out able to maintain my sanity,
Doing your job. Your job.
Yeah.
Now tell me, you must have seen the movie Hurt Locker, which is about a bomb
EOD
specialist, right?
Yeah.
And the dangers that he faces and the trauma and everything that he sees around him, and then he gets, he gets a vacation and he goes home and he's shopping for Cheerios with his wife. The change, how did you manage, forgetting about the arrest and the legal issues, how did you manage from going to the adrenaline rush of being in battle, of leading men in battle, in righteous battle to eliminate evil from that part of the world, and then you go home and you're doing ordinary things, worrying about the sink that's getting clogged or something.
Yeah.
That I don't know how I would ever be able to do that.
It's a learning process. I had 8 combat deployments, and my wife, Andrea, was with me through all of them. and I think we learned as we went. Being in the SEAL teams or any special operations unit is a very fast paced. You're on the speeding train that just keeps going, and you have to learn to sort of deal with that. And it's very difficult on families, but I give all the credit to my wife. She stood strong when she needed to. She made sure, even when I came back from deployments and maybe I, wasn't completely unwound. She dealt with it.
Right. It's not easy to get unwound.
But we both worked through it. And I think by the time I was on my 5th or 6th combat deployment, it was sort of a routine. We knew, like, okay, when I come back, it's about a month of like, I need to get used to being back. You need to get used to having me back. And we had it down. When you get out, though, it's a totally different story. When you get out completely, that's where the real struggle starts, because you don't have the SEAL teams anymore. You don't have your identity. You don't have your purpose.
Exactly.
You sort of have to reinvent yourself, which is it's a lot harder said than done.
No,
to be able to do
I
that.
completely understand it, because for 40 years I ran a public company, and then I retired. And what do you mean I'm retired? That's my identity.
Yeah.
Is being a CEO or a chairman of a company, and it's taken me about a year to get more comfortable with it and find other things to do.
Relax.
But it's still not satisfying. I got to tell you, retirement for me and for a guy like you isn't the right thing. So I'm glad that you did find something else to be devoted to.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely it takes time, and I can still say I've been out for almost 4 years now. I'm not completely there. I'm still
because you were in charge of something, and you were in charge of lives.
20 years of combat, and you're just on that level all the time. That's going to take some time to unwind, and I think that's the hard part that the guys have a hard time grasping, is like, it's okay to be the way you are right now. It's okay to be messed up. It's what you just went through is not normal, and it's going to take some time to unwind. And once you learn to accept that, and you're like, okay, I do need to sort of like rehabilitate a little bit, then stuff starts to get easier. I took about a year. Well, when I got out, I wrote the book to get the truth out there about everything that happened, The Man in the Arena. And then and I was still sort of in fight mode at the time. Like, okay, the trial had just happened. But once the book was out and we put that out and sort of normal life started to settle in, then I started noticing issues. I was like, okay, I'd get up, pace around the house, couldn't, decide on what I wanted to do, because my life was very regimented up to that point.
Totally different. Totally
like I had a schedule.
Life.
I knew what I was going, what to do. So it took a while to like sort of get into that routine.
How do you lower the aggression? Because when you're in the military, especially in combat like you were, you have this testosterone flowing, the adrenaline flowing, and then you come back and you're in a traffic jam and some asshole does something, cuts you off. You want to shoot them. I would think. I mean, that's how I would.
Well, you definitely have. It's
you
not
have
like
a fighting mindset.
Yeah, you're in a. So I'll tell you this: when I got out, I went and got tested. I got a bunch of tests done. And they came back and they're like, you are in fight or flight 95% of your day. Like, you're peaked out at fight or flight, which I had no idea. I was like, I don't feel like I am. And they're like, because you're so used to being at that level, you don't know it. And so I've taken the time. I went and did hyperbaric oxygen treatments. I had some ganglion blocks done. I did whatever I could to like better myself, to sort of see what would work. I did hallucinogenics. I did the ibogaine. All of it.
What about another battle? What about suing the military? Is that a possibility?
So we sued the Navy. So here's the problem: is you really can't sue the military because they have the Ferris Act, and that prevents you from suing. They can pretty much do whatever they want.
I see.
And you can't sue them. But we found a loophole because I have a very good lawyer they leaked all of my private information. So my command gave all of my private information to the New York Times, which gave a certain parasitic journalist named Dave Phillips enough ammo to write smear articles about me over and over and over. And he actually wrote a book about me. So we were like, that is one thing they can't do. So we sued them on that, and the Navy eventually came back and were like, we want to settle.
Good.
So we took the settlement.
Okay. So you hurt them. You got back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what? It wasn't even, to me, it's not even about the money. It's more about,
I got it.
You admitted.
Hitting him in the face.
You knew what you did was
and
wrong.
What about Phillips? Can you sue him?
No. So, I mean, it's the New York Times.
Yeah.
They get sued on a daily basis. And it's like, we had to sort of like, okay, do we really want to make this our life about like going into these legal battles, or do we want to like shift and go on living the way we're supposed to? I wanted to be with my kids. And
I understand, but it's still a mission. And
and the
okay.
mission.
So you did part of it at least. Okay. All right.
And honestly, the part the mission is the nonprofit that we founded out of it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do that, tell me what changes you would make in the part of the military that you know about in SEAL recruitment. Is there something that they must have done something wrong if you're dealing in the field with individuals who are in your team and they're listening to fucking NPR in the morning, right? There's something wrong because NPR is way on the left, okay? Yeah. And anybody who signs up for the military missions like you've been on can't be on the left. You can't be over there.
Well, I'll say this.
So how do these people get in? What would you do to change the recruiting or the recruiting?
The recruiting is, I think, not the problem. I think they're, the guys or the young men that are signing up to be a SEAL know what they're getting into. The large majority of them are joining for the same reasons I did. Mm-hmm. They want to become a warrior. They want to fight for this country. They want the toughest task. My inclination to like make change is I would fire the leadership all has to go. Mm-hmm. All those officers, and I would change the way officers make rank. Because I think at a certain level, I don't know if it's 04 or 05, they have to get signed off by Congress to pick up their next rank, which then makes them a politician in uniform.
Right.
So they, favor towards whatever congressman is going to sign off on them getting promoted. Like, well, then I'll promote your agenda, which is how you've seen the woke agenda get promoted down through the military, especially in naval special warfare. Because most of the officers that are in charge of naval special warfare are all liberal Democrats, and they're all on that side. So it's getting pushed down through the ranks. The dudes that are signing up are not the issue. Mm-hmm. They have no choice but to listen to that shit.
I see. Yep.
They're there for the same reason I was there. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this: like you'll have teammates that might be Democrat, but here's the thing: I don't care as long as you're down. As long as you're here for the mission, I don't care what your political beliefs are. Mm-hmm. As long as I know you have my back and I have yours, that's all that matters. But I do think because the leadership is an NSW is so left-leaning, then it causes those people that are left-leaning that join to sort of voice their opinions more. And you're like, okay.
I think this started during Obama's first or second term,
for sure.
where he replaced, I think it was 100 or 150 flag officers with his own people. And they're leftists. Yeah. That's what it is.
And that's most of the officers that are in charge now in those admiral positions came up through the Obama administration.
Right.
So which is why they were so hardcore on going against Trump.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Well, we had another guest. I forget what his name was, but he was a senior officer in the U.S. Space Corps. And like you, he was very concerned.
He spoke out, right?
Yeah, he spoke out. Yeah. He wrote a book, and they fired him.
Yeah.
Right? He spoke out about this woke agenda and all this diversity crap that he was forced to listen to, hours a week, and then he was forced to pass it on to his team, and his team came to him And the people reported to him and told him that they were very disappointed about the military. They didn't know why they joined the military now, because they're being taught that America is a bad country. And who's gonna risk their life for a country that's bad? I mean, what kind of training is that?
And that's the thing. Like, the men and women in the military, I think the majority of them completely disagree with what's going on in the military, this administration.
Right.
But here's the thing: the military is a dictatorship, and you speak out and you voice your opinion,
you're dead.
You're done. Your career's ruined. It's the same thing with people that stood up and didn't want to take the vaccine.
Right.
They're getting,
and I'm one of those,
raked over the coals.
Right. Can you imagine this?
Yeah.
The government forcing you to take a vaccine, an injection into your bloodstream
that doesn't work.
That is untested. Who knows the long-term effects? Forcing you to do that. Okay. Now, I knew people. I saw people double mask. They're afraid to breathe the air. Right. I saw a guy in my neighborhood in a convertible top down with a mask on. This is months ago. During the hysteria.
Yeah.
So these people are afraid to breathe the air, but they were lining up to get an injection of a chemical into your body that nobody really knows about, okay? Nobody knows long-term effects. So there's something very screwed up in America that people are willing to do that and not question it. And being forced to do it, that's okay. You want to volunteer, that's up to you, okay?
Yeah, go ahead and do it. If you want to take it, take it. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. But don't put that on me.
Yeah, and after you've joined a company or the military, you've joined. They have no right to change the rules, in my view. They can't say, oh, we're going to fire you unless you take this drug.
Well, not just fire you. We're going to punish you before you get out. That's what they're doing. They're punishing these individuals before they can leave, giving them dishonorable discharges, ruining the dishonorable discharge on your career after you get out is a huge black mark on any job you try and get.
On any job, right.
Yeah.
Oh, you're in the military.
But that's what they're giving them for not taking a vaccine.
Right.
And these are men and women who signed up to serve the country and now getting punished.
Frightening.
Yeah.
So going forward, how is it going to be possible to get people, men, in particular men, to join the military when we talk about, when the media and everybody's talking about toxic masculinity, that it's bad to be, basically they're saying it's bad to be masculine, right? So how are we going to get rough, tough men who are willing to risk their lives, who are willing to get hurt to do the right thing? What's going to happen?
I've been asked this question numerous times, and I think, the best response I have is to take care of your community, whatever community you're in, be an example for those men. Mm-hmm. Take those young men, these high schoolers out, show them what being a man is all about. I live, in northern Florida, and one of the high schools took the whole senior football team out to this range that I worked at, and we ran, they ran a 2-day sort of how to be a man camp, learned them, taught them how to, do resumes, tie ties, what a man should be responsible for. I was tasked with putting them through a pretty rigorous teamwork exercise to sort of make them feel some pain, but pain for a purpose, and to sort of depend on one another. Those are the things that should be going on, because if your kids are being taught
coddled
in school and being taught that about toxic masculinity or whatever other agenda they're pushing, it's on us to do on the outside to take these kids out and be like, listen, this is what you're supposed to be. This is what a man is. And that's the truth. I know
this started probably 30 years ago when I noticed all the kids with a helmet riding a bike. Fuck that. Riding a bike is part of life, and getting hurt is part of life. Yes, I'm sure there are some traumatic brain injuries of kids going over the handlebars, but why penalize everybody else? Why make everybody else afraid? It's a fear. And I remember taking my kids out when they were 4, 5, 6, or 7. Told me to climb that fence. Oh, well, we might get hurt. I said, but I'm here. We'll take care of it. Making them do what today are considered dangerous things, right? It's not dangerous. Have some fucking self-confidence. Don't be afraid of everything. Double masking with a plastic shield. When I see this, I just...
Oh, it's the same. It's the same with like the whole feelings and emotions. Like, you're saying this and that's hurting my feelings.
Her
and
feelings.
It's... I don't...
What
I
about
mean,
sticks and stones can break my
yeah.
bones, but names will never hurt me?
I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say to me bounces off me and sticks to you.
Exactly right. It only hurts your feelings if you're allowing it to hurt your feelings. Right?
And that's the thing. If you raise kids in this environment where you're like, oh no, that... you should speak out if that hurts your feelings, and you should say something. It's like, well, then you are raising a victim, and that's the thing. Is like the victim mentality has swept across this nation. You're propelled forward if whoever's the worst victim is propelled forward. Right. So then it entices everyone else to be like, well, how can I be a victim to make it?
I want to be a victim too.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. So then it gets other people in trouble as well, because then. With the whole Me Too movement and this and that, I saw that a butt ton when I was in that brig. There was a lot of guys in there that shouldn't have been in there.
Because of sexual harassment or something like that.
Because they were told the Navy had to up their prosecution process by a certain percentage.
I see.
So the Navy, of course, has followed orders, and that was under Obama.
Wow.
Got it. So, I mean, this whole victim mentality hurts other people as well. But here's the thing. It's like you have the choice to act like a victim. Yeah. That's your choice. And I could have...
I'd like the saying, act like a victor, not a victim.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Act like a victor, like you're in charge. What is this weakness? There's a weakness in our society, and it started years ago. I remember when Alan Alda was being held out as the ideal male. Because he was sensitive. Remember, he was on MASH. There's an actor on MASH.
Oh, I grew up watching MASH.
Right,
yeah.
And that was years ago. They started with talking about how Alan Alda is the ideal male because he's sensitive and this and that. We're in trouble. All right, but all of this has a positive because at the end of 2019, when you retired from the Navy, you and your wife started a foundation called Pipe Hitter Foundation.
Yes.
And very interesting to help people who are in the crosshairs for no reason of the legal system. So first of all, where did that name come from?
So, when I was released from military prison, I was locked in Balboa. I had a lot of long talks with Andrea, and I was telling her about all the individuals that I saw in there that I thought were innocent.
Shouldn't be there either.
Shouldn't be there at all. And a lot of them are like 18, 19-year-olds that are serving like 8-year prison sentences for smoking marijuana or adultery.
That's a crime in the military?
Oh, yeah. Big time. Yeah, they'll lock you away for that. So I told her, I was like, this isn't right. I definitely, after spending some time in there, sort of felt guilty that I was like, I'm getting all this attention, mainly because I was a SEAL. But I was like, you have all these sailors, soldiers, airmen in here who are getting no attention, who are literally serving 10 years. So I was like, we decided like, okay, we'll do something about this after the trial. And so we decided to form a foundation. I called it the Pipe Hitter Foundation because... in my community and a lot of like other communities, when you are asked about somebody, maybe you don't know them, and you're asking about somebody, and you ask, like, hey, what's up with this guy? And if they're like, yeah, that guy's a pipe hitter, that's an automatic, like, that's somebody I want on my team. That's someone that's willing to put themselves out there
for somebody else.
Yeah, to get the mission done.
So it generally refers to a special operator.
Yeah. Or, in law enforcement uses it.
They do too.
It's, the warrior culture. Like, I am willing to sacrifice myself for the greater cause.
I wonder where it came from. Did you happen to know? I mean, it sounds like pipe fitter when I first. Yeah, so I said,
it's been around for a while.
Right.
Yeah, I've gotten that a bunch after, like.
Yeah, we're not plumbers, yeah.
It's been around for a while. I don't know where it originated from.
Okay.
But either way, we decided to call it, the Pipe Hitter Foundation. And
it's a 501c3.
Yep.
Right? You have IRS designation.
Yep.
And the objectives are?
The objective is, so what we do is so when we support active duty military, first responders, and law enforcement if they're being unjustly targeted, and basically being unjustly accused for doing their job.
Yep.
If we deem to help these individuals out, then we provide emergency relief aid to their families right away, because when you're going through that stressful time of the media attacking you and smearing you, and then you're facing trial, there's a lot of stressors that come into that. So we provide emergency relief aid right off the bat. We raise money for their legal defense, so they can get a good lawyer, because what we learned going through that process is the only rights that you have are the ones that you can afford. So we do that, and then we will also advocate publicly for them if need be. We do support a lot of special operators, or we have, and a lot of those guys don't want their names put out there, so we don't advocate. So we'll just help out behind the scenes. But if it's a big case, in which we have for some law enforcement, we will go out there, get on news stations, tell their story, use our social media platform to put their word out. And because of what my wife and brother did, they made a lot of movement into Capitol Hill. So they have a lot of
people
good
with
congressmen,
ears, right?
Yeah, that are willing to do the right thing. So we talk to them and get them involved. So my wife and brother pretty much created this roadmap to defeat the system, to defeat this corrupt system.
Yeah.
So we use that to our advantage to help these individuals out.
So what happens is if individuals, they'll hear about it and they make an application, they fill out a form, they give a call, they call in.
So they'll fill out a grant online on pipehitterfoundation.org.
Yep.
They fill out a grant, and then twice a month, myself and the board members all review it. And then we'll either give thumbs up or thumbs down for each one. And if we decide to help,
everybody, of course.
Yeah, you can. And so, some of the applications that we get are humorous and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not in our wheelhouse. It's more
drunk driving or something, whatever. Right.
Yeah, it's we really, and I'll tell you this, we do our due diligence by really digging in to their case before we say yes. We all have to be on the same page. So, but once we do, then we contact that individual and say, hey, we're here to help. And I'll tell you what, Dina Cruden and Andrea, my wife, there's some powerhouses. So they pretty much take charge, and they're like, we're going to go from here. And we pretty much just try to set them up for success.
And tell me about raising money. Are you successful at getting donations?
Yeah. So when we first started off, and we've been very blessed, everything was very reactionary. So everybody that we helped, we would, like, okay, we're getting on board, and then it would be a lot of work of, getting out there, getting on news programs or the social media, trying to get people to pay attention. But then once we started making some headway, we started, getting some good donations, and then we took on Lieutenant Colonel Scheller. He was the Marine who spoke out against the Afghan withdrawal. He was the active duty Marine that in uniform.
I remember, yes.
Yeah. So the Marine Corps came after him. We supported him, and we pretty much helped him through that whole process because his story was so widely known. He got a lot of donations.
Right.
Yeah, which at that point we were not taking anything from any donation. Everything was going 100% to the individual. But because we're such a small nonprofit, my wife and Dina and a lot of other board members are working around the clock. So we decided, hey, we're going to take, I believe it's 5%.
Sure, for administration, whatever. Of course.
So because we did that, we've managed to make enough money now we don't have to be reactionary. We're like, okay, what do you need? Boom, here you go. We have this for you. Let us
great.
set this up
and the
for
money
you.
comes in from GoFundMe campaigns or people hear about it and they send you a donation?
Yeah, it's more people hear about it, and then they donate it into the website.
You should try to get money from foundations. You can apply to charitable. There are organizations that fund charities.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to get into that realm. I mean, I think Andrea and I look at each other, every once in a while, and we're like, I can't believe we're doing, like, this is getting bigger, which is great. I just, it's just we need to educate ourselves on how to expand, and
sure, that's correct.
Being around intelligent people who have, like,
you have to have some board
yourself,
members who understand.
We take advice from anybody.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me a typical story, or is this Marine is a good one?
Well, we had one here in San Diego. The Degas family, Matt Degas. He was a law enforcement officer during the pandemic when the whole defund the police movement was up and going. He went and did a routine clearance through one of the train stations. They told him to go down there and, like, hey, get the riffraff just out of there. He went, and there was this one African-American individual who, I guess, was mouthing off, and all he did was, like, hey, grabbed him and sat him down and was like, stop mouthing off. I think the guy actually assaulted or, did something to him first. And because somebody was filming it with an iPhone, they edited it and put it out there. And so pretty much his life was in shambles. Within that night, Black Lives Matter was at his front doorstep. They got his address. Were riding in front of his house. His wife at the time, I believe, she was pregnant. Very stressful. And so they actually had to move locations because they were in fear for their lives. And so we ended up getting behind them, getting the word out, and raising enough money so they could get their lawyers. And he was found innocent. They went to court, and it was like, boom, boom.
Of course. Yeah, but the punishment already happens.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's what
the
people don't
punishment is the process.
And I think that's what people don't get is, like, once you're accused.
Yeah, that's the punishment.
And you're smeared in the media.
Yeah.
That's all that needs to be done. I mean, I'm a prime example, to this day. It's, you're constantly having to disprove or, put the truth out there of like all the misinformation that's been put out about you, because the first thing people read is what they believe.
Yeah. Oh, sure. And with the smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
Right. There are two famous quotations that came to mind while I was preparing for this podcast. The first one is from Edmund Burke, who said, and I quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." The other is from Thomas Sowell, and he said, "If you are not prepared to use force to defend civilization, then be prepared to accept barbarism." Eddie Gallagher is one of those good men who Edmund Burke refers to. And as Sowell states regarding the need to use force, Eddie was trained to use force, he was prepared to use force, and he did use force to defend our civilization against barbarism. America needs more good, tough men like Eddie Gallagher. Thank you, Eddie, for spending time with me today, and thank you so much more for fighting evil in the defense of Judeo-Christian values and of our society. If you want to join Eddie and Andrea in their efforts to help other service members and first responders who find themselves in the crosshairs of the legal system as Eddie did, please consider making a tax-deductible donation to the Pipe Hitter Foundation. Just go to pipehitterfoundation.org, it's all one word, and click donate. I did, and I hope you will too. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob, please subscribe and you'll be automatically notified of future podcasts in this series.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob. If you enjoyed these interviews with some of today's most influential thought leaders, please follow and rate the show on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget, you can also watch each episode on YouTube as well. We'll see you next time.